G'day, Owen Lock here, doing a quick review of the recently released CLAKE 2 product. For those of you who are not aware of CLAKE, it's an Australian company. They design and manufacture all of their equipment in-house, and they basically design advanced motorcycle control systems. The original CLAKE Pro lever system was a single lever where the first part of the travel was actually clutch, and then once you get to a certain point in the lever travel, it would start to engage the rear brake, so you could have a combination clutch and rear brake on one lever. There's some inherent compromises involved in that, so the latest product that they've come up with is this one, which is the 2, and it is in essence a light pull single finger clutch on the inside here, and a left-hand rear brake on the left here, and the left-hand rear brake operates on the same plane as the clutch, so you don't have to reach up or down for some of the other left-hand brake products on the market. Now, I'll start by talking about the clutch. Now, the clutch is in essence the same as the CLAKE 1, which is a one-finger easy pull clutch system. Where the 1 differs, and this particular system differs from some of the other light pull clutches on the market, is the way that it actually provides the assistance. The other levers on the market typically just mess with the leverage ratio between the pivot point and the piston actuator, so any increase in clutch power is offset by greater modulation of the lever. So your clutch gets lighter, but it starts to feel a bit mushy. With this particular system, it doesn't work like that. It actually has a spring which assists the clutch, and the spring actuates a cam, and that cam has a profile cut into it which alters the way in which the spring assists. So this clutch is fitted with a cam which is specific to a Recluse. This bike is a 2014 model KTM 350 XCF. They come standard with a reasonably heavy clutch, and because it's got a Recluse fitted to it, a bike which has a Recluse Core EXP or EXP 2.0 fitted, you'll find that the clutch lever, the initial part of the lever travel is very firm, and then as you actually start to bring in it starts to get a lot easier after that. So this particular cam has a lot of assistance in the first part of the clutch lever, and the assistance backs off as you bring it in. So what it does is it makes a Recluse equipped bike, makes the clutch feel very much like a conventional bike. It's very light, much lighter than the standard clutch. Very easy to use and very positive feedback because you're not messing with leverage ratios, you're just providing some spring assistance there. So the other obvious aspect of this one is the left-hand rear brake. You can see the loop in the lever down here, and that's so that you can put your finger over the clutch and operate the clutch without actually interfering with the brake setup. The levers themselves look quite organic. You can see there's quite a few flat bits and angles set onto these levers, and that's so that when you're operating each lever independently, you don't get fingers caught between levers or anything. I've ridden it with a couple of times, one of which was at Wildwood on the weekend, and that's like a bit of an extreme enduro complex. So very challenging, demanding tracks, very rocky, get shaken around a lot, lots of rear brake and lots of clutch being used, and I never once had any problems with the ergos of the system. It was I never touched another lever with any other finger. It's actually very easy to use and very comfortable, and there's certainly no issues with the ergonomics and the design of the levers. The left-hand rear brake, good for a few different applications. On a Recluse equipped bike where you've got the dreaded angel gear, where you stop on a really steep hill and then roll backwards all of a sudden, or worse still, if you go to roll backwards and then you go to feed on a little bit of throttle to stop yourself from rolling backwards and you flip the bike, can end pretty disastrous. And anyone who's rides a Recluse equipped bike and has experienced that will pretty quickly develop a fear of those sorts of scenarios, because it can get pretty nasty pretty quick and result in cartwheeling back down the hill if you're not careful. So what this does is enables you to ride up, come to a complete stop on the hill and grab the rear brake with your hand. So if your foot is not on the brake pedal and you happen to be trying to stop yourself from falling over or generally preventing a crash, which is typically what happens, you can very easily grab this rear brake, stop yourself from sliding backwards. Unlike the traditional CLAKE, this product has a a very powerful rear brake. In fact, the rear brake was so powerful when I got it, I had to replace the cams and put a milder cam in there because I just don't have enough feel in my left middle finger to actually modulate the brake properly. But now I put the right cam in, it's really nice, and I can ride down hills and just apply the amount of brake that I need. And it's still got ample power to pull me up in those recluse angel gear situations. The other application, as I just mentioned, was riding down hills. This is a bit of a surprise benefit to me because I didn't really see it. I didn't really imagine it being much different. But when you typically ride down a hill, especially if it's a very steep hill, and you're standing on the pegs and you're leaning right back off the bike, and your bum's right back over the back of the seat here, what will actually happen is your feet naturally want to point up in the air, but you're pointing one toe right down flat to actuate the rear brake. So it twists your hips and it throws you out of balance. And in order to get the amount of feel that you need off that rear brake, your entire right leg is very tensed. So you're very uneven on the bike as you're going down those really tricky, very steep hills. So by using the left-hand rear brake instead, you can actually point both of your toes evenly up in the air. You can put more braking force down through your legs because you can actually push the braking force from your feet down through the foot pegs instead of normally when you're just trying to squeeze the shrouds with your legs and stop yourself from sliding forward. So the result is that you can put more of the braking force through your legs, so it's easier on the body, and all of a sudden your hips are square with the bike, you're not twisted up, and your right leg's relaxed, which gives you a lot more feel of the bike, and you can steer the bike with the pegs going down the hill instead of actually having to steer the bike with your knees by squeezing the shrouds. So it makes for much less tiring long downhills and greater control, which was a real surprise for me, and I really enjoyed it. Where I didn't use the left-hand rear brake a great deal was in general riding conditions, and that's when cornering and whipping through the tight trees and things. I found that I just don't have I'm just not used to the concept of having the left-hand rear brake, and while I consciously thought about it, I used it and I didn't see it as being a huge advantage, but as soon as I stopped thinking about it, I just reverted to using the pedal again. I'm sure that once I get a bit more used to having a rear brake on the bars here, I'll find some other uses for it. The other thing I noticed is if I was in a situation where I was trying to do something like a slow mono or something where I required a heap of rear brake feel, like I was practicing some stand-up slow circles and things, I actually just moved my hand over and used the brake with my index finger, and I actually used that in some of the steep downhills too, where I was really looking for increased brake feel, and it's actually surprisingly easy. You only have to move your hand over about that far and you can very easily grab that, and all of a sudden you've got all of the control and modulation that you normally have on your clutch finger to control the brake, which is, in my case, is much more control than I can get out of my middle finger alone. The other features that are worth actually mentioning with the CLAKE 2 is that in here there's a grub screw, difficult to see, but there's a grub screw that can be wound out, and what that does is it can create a bit of overlap between the levers. So as you pull the brake lever on, the last part of the brake lever can actually start to pull the clutch in with it. So especially with a non-recluse equipped bike, it's not so much of an issue with a bike with a recluse, but if you don't have a recluse, what this enables you to do is grab a handful of rear brake. It'll feed some clutch in towards the end of that rear brake travel and create a bit of a slipper clutch, so you can grab a handful of rear brake and not stall the motor. Conversely, there's another adjuster screw in under here, which enables you to have some overlap between the clutch and the brake. So as you pull the clutch on, towards the end of the clutch lever travel, it'll start feeding brake on, which is more like a conventional CLAKE arrangement where you have the combination of the clutch then brake on the one lever. Those screws can be adjusted independently, so you can have overlap between your brake and your clutch, or overlap between your clutch and your brake, or both, completely independent in the way that it is controlled. So I'm yet to actually really experiment with that stuff. I don't think there's going to be a huge advantage because I have the recluse fitted, but I imagine without a bike without the recluse, the ability to feed that rear brake on and give a bit of slipper clutch towards the end of it would make those downhills really easy, because it would just mean you can just feed your rear brake on and not have to worry about anything else. that's about it for now. Hope this has been informative. I've got another couple of rides planned for later this week, where I'll be belting around my usual testing grounds, and I'll be testing out I'll be playing with the overlap. I've also got some different cams to try in order to change the start point of this rear brake. At the moment, the rear brake is quite a long way from the handlebars, so what I'll be doing is tuning it so that the lever sort of sits about there. Actually, the same with the clutch lever. I'm going to bring them both closer into my hand so they start about there, and the rear brake's just that little bit easier to grab, and the clutch take-up point's at the right point. But both the clutch and the brake have around 400 different cams that can be applied to them, so that you can change starting position of the lever, the rate at which the slack, that's the slack between basically when the lever's in its fully out of position and when the brake actually starts applying here. You can adjust the amount of slack, how quickly it ramps up initially, then you can adjust the leverage ratio once you're applying the brake, so how powerful the brake is. Same thing with the clutch. You can totally change the profile in which the clutch is assisted. So a lot of tunability into it, and as time goes on, I'll be working to have these levers a little bit closer to my fingers, have a little bit less free play in the brake there, and getting the clutch to exactly the take-up point that I like. But all very easily achievable. And once you get your head around how the cams work, it's actually quite easy to look at the profile of the cam itself and see what it will do. So pretty easy to tune it to your liking. So that's about it for now. I'll report back once I've done a bit more riding on it. And I guess there's one other thing to mention. This is a prototype. It has a two-piece lever arrangement. The actual production units will have a single-piece lever, and the lever will be a little bit more organic, not quite so clunky. The product will be released quite shortly. So if you've got any inquiries, jump onto www.clake.com.au.